Welcome to today's Security Plus study session. Today we're going to be talking about hypervisors and cloud security. A hypervisor is a device that's used to create virtual machines. There's two main types of hypervisors: bare metal and software hypervisors. These are also known as Type 1 and Type 2. Type 1 being the bare metal, Type 2 being the software based. The difference between these two is that one is a standalone set of hardware, so it's a standalone device, and that would be the Type 1 or bare metal hypervisor, and the second would be purely based within software itself. Again, hypervisors are used to create virtual machines. That includes virtual desktops, virtual computers, virtual applications, and operating systems. There's many different types of hypervisors, and we use one within the Security Plus course known as VMware. So we use VMware to operate a virtual desktop known as Kali Linux. This is the VMware interface. VMware is a Type 2 hypervisor. And here you see I have two different virtual machines. These are virtual computers essentially. They operate exactly like a real computer would. I have to load up the desktop, or not the desktop, these are Linux machines, but load up the operating system when I boot. And the machines can suspend the state of the operating system at any time. So here I have Kali Linux in a suspended state, and I can choose to play that virtual machine. It's going to restore the virtual machine to that same state. And now I have my Kali Linux operating system. So this operating system can access the internet. It can do everything that a normal operating system can do, just it's contained within this virtual machine. So you see I can access the internet through here. I can anyway, I can access the internet barring any certificate issues, and I could perform actions on this operating system just like I had a standalone computer running Kali Linux itself. So instead of the need for an additional computer, I can just run a whole operating system self-contained within my existing computer. And you can do this for web applications. You can do this for any number of devices. And the virtual machine will play off of the connection that you have and the devices that you have on the host machine. Okay? So VMware is a tool for, and this is the VMware interface, is a tool for using or installing and creating virtual machines, and it's a Type 2 hypervisor. The VMware software itself is the Type 2 hypervisor. So I hope that explains it a little better. With hypervisors, you have many different, the functionality is dependent on the type of hypervisor you're using and the means at which you're using the hypervisor. So if you're hosting multiple virtual machines, say hundreds of virtual machines within your organization, and you're using these virtual machines, you're allowing users to access these virtual machines, say remotely. Maybe you have a large remote workforce and you want to provide them with a desktop or an operating system that they can perform organization assigned tasks to. It's a work computer essentially, but you want to offer that over a web connection. Well, you might want to use a Type 1 hypervisor that could manage hundreds of virtual machines, and then users would connect through probably a VPN onto your hypervisor to access that remote desktop and then perform their job. If your organization only wants to operate a couple virtual machines, maybe for testing purposes or software testing, then a Type 2 hypervisor would be more suited for that role. Type 2 hypervisors have an advantage in that they're cheaper. You don't have to invest in hardware. The Type 2 hypervisor can be installed on existing hardware that you have within the organization. And they're easily scalable. You can create many different virtual machines without any additional or a very limited additional investment in capital. So some examples of how Type 2 hypervisors can be a little better. It all depends on your needs. The one main concern with Type 2 hypervisors, though, is that they're more vulnerable to security vulnerabilities because they're not only susceptible to vulnerabilities against the hypervisor itself, but also against the host machine. So you have to worry about the security of the host device and also the hypervisor. With a Type 1 or bare metal hypervisor, you have a standalone set of hardware. So attackers would have to compromise that piece of hardware in order to access the virtual machines or perform attacks against those virtual machines. So it's bare metal type hypervisors are much more secure. Another form of virtualization is an application cell or an application container. These are methods of performing virtualization for applications in which you have an application running in its own virtual environment. Web applications are often run in application cells. So, for example, web clients like Gmail may run in an application cell hosted by Google. The cells themselves, one property of them is that they adopt the properties of the operating system that hosts the cell. So if you're running a Windows device, you're only going to be able to create Windows-based application cells. VM sprawl occurs in an organization when many different virtual machines are created and the organization loses track of those virtual machines. The organization just basically can't keep track or forgets about maybe a few virtual machines or maybe a few hundred virtual machines depending on the scale of the organization. And maybe they forget to patch those machines, they forget to patch the hypervisors, and that creates multiple security vulnerabilities within the organization. Also, VMwares that are neglected or forgotten about take up space within the host computer, the host device. Virtual machines require a certain amount of hard drive space to be provisioned. They need to reserve that space in the hard drive for the virtual machine so the virtual machine can run. And they need to take up system resources when they're running. So if you have virtual machines that are not being actively used, but they're still running, or virtual machines that have been neglected or forgotten, and they're still provisioned, you're going to have VM sprawl. And that eats up resources, eats up unnecessary bandwidth. And it's just like any type of sprawl that you're familiar with. You know, if you have device sprawl on your network, VM sprawl is a similar concept. It's just for virtual machines. Network diagrams, particularly for virtual machines, are very helpful, and some organizations neglect to create a network diagram for their virtual machines, but it's very important to keep track of the number of devices that you're using. Virtual machine escape is when a virtual machine user is able to manipulate data outside of their particular virtual machine instance. So an attacker would either have access to that virtual machine, virtual machine, and then perform attacks on the hypervisor to gain access outside of the boundaries of their virtual machine. Again, in this type of scenario, a Type 2 hypervisor, a software hypervisor, is much more susceptible to these types of attacks rather than a bare metal or Type 1 hypervisor, because attackers can not only perform attacks against the virtual machine itself, they can perform attacks against the host machine as well. Full instance encryption, where a virtual machine is encrypted when it's suspended or the disk it's stored on is encrypted as well. That should be used to protect data at rest. So if attackers are successful at VM escape, the data that they are able to access is in an encrypted state. So they would be receiving encrypted data instead of a virtual machine left unencrypted and easily accessible. And hypervisors need to be hardened with security updates, patches, etc., just like any other operating system. And for Type 2 hypervisors, the host machine needs to be hardened on a regular basis as well. So let's go into cloud security a little bit. So cloud computing uses virtual machines for most of the data and the applications. For most cloud service offerings, virtual machines are used. It's one of the tenets of cloud computing. A cloud service provider is an organization that sells cloud services to cloud customers. A cloud service provider is either an entity, an organization, a company. It could be in a private cloud, a controlling organization, and then the cloud customers may be classified as the employees of that organization. But the cloud service provider is the one providing the cloud services, just like the name suggests. Cloud computing allows users to purchase services in a simple way, elastic, and scalable means, which means that the first simple, once it's purchased, it requires very little interaction between the customer and the cloud service provider. The service itself is self-maintained, basically. It's given to the customer on an ongoing basis. The customer doesn't need to contact the cloud service provider regularly. They can just easily access that service, maybe with a set of credentials. Elastic means that the customer is able to only purchase the amount of resources that they need. Okay, and scalability means that the resources can be increased or decreased. The amount of resources can be increased or decreased based on the cloud customer's need very quickly. So if a cloud customer wants to store data in the cloud, perhaps they only have 100 gigabytes of data. They can purchase 100 gigabytes of storage space and they would be charged for that. That represents elasticity. And say a week later they get another 500 gigabytes of data that they need stored. They can easily contact a cloud service provider and increase their storage capacity to accommodate that data. That refers to scalability. CSPs use virtualization to take the devices that they have, and the cloud service provider will purchase multiple devices with the intent of servicing many different customers. So they'll have a data center with a large investment in security devices, databases, virtualization technologies, etc., with the intent to recoup that cost by selling these services to many, many different customers. So to maximize the efficiency of their investment, they will use virtualization to split up these devices. Instead of just one device per customer, one device might service a dozen customers. That's possible through virtualization. There's three main types of cloud deployments, and these deployments describe in a basic sense what the cloud customer can expect from the CSP. Infrastructure as a service is the most basic deployment type, and this is where the CSP provides the facility, the connectivity, and the servers, and the security. So this includes the facility itself, the building, power, and that includes power redundancy with backup generators and uninterrupted power supplies, all the heating, the cooling, the ventilation required to run the devices, the servers themselves, the cables, the internet connectivity, and the networking required to run these devices. The customer is then in charge of the operating system, the software, and the data that goes into this offering. In platform as a service, the cloud service provider provides everything that was in infrastructure as a service, but they also include the operating system. So the cloud service provider provides an updated operating system, and the cloud customer is only responsible for the data and the applications. So the cloud customer can install whatever applications they want. They can put whatever data they want on that operating system, and the cloud service provider will keep that operating system secure and up to date. So virtual desktop instances are basically platform as a service deployments. Earlier in the video, we looked at our Kali Linux deployment, or Kali Linux operating system. If that operating system was hosted by a cloud service provider and I would just log into that operating system, maybe with a username or password, that'd be a prime example of platform as a service. Software as a service is where the cloud service provider controls everything but the data. So this is a web application. Webmail, like Gmail, Yahoo, MSN, Mail.com, all of those are software as a service deployments. Cloud storage services like Dropbox, those are also software as a service. Video conferencing technology like Zoom, that's also a software as a service offering. So the vast majority of cloud deployments are software as a service. And again, the customer is only charged with the data, or is only in charge of the data. So those are the three main types. And here we have this visualized. Remember, in infrastructure as a service, you have all of these four: power, data, security, servers, and storage. And then as each deployment model grows, and with platform as a service, it would be inclusive of all of these. And software insurance as a service would include all of these. And then the customer would be in charge of the data, and that would be outside of each of these deployment models. So I hope this helps visualize the differences between the deployment models. And that's going to conclude our study session for today. Thanks for taking the time to watch. I hope this helped you. Good luck in your studies. And if you're interested in learning Security Plus and earning an average yearly salary of $85,000 per year, I invite you to check out our Security Plus course. We have a full course. It will get you certified within 1 week, guaranteed, full money back if you're not happy with the course for any reason. You have a 14-day money back guarantee. And this course will get you certified, pass the exam on the first attempt to get your Security Plus certification so you can start earning that $85,000 average yearly salary. When I say that, that means that Security Plus holders earn an average yearly salary of $85,000 per year. Some earn much more, some earn less, but the average salary is $85,000. In our current situation, cybersecurity is more important than ever. People are migrating to the cloud, businesses are having remote workforces. Everyone needs cybersecurity. Every time you see a news article saying a cyber hack has occurred or hackers have done this and this and this, it just highlights the need for cybersecurity and why this is the world's fastest growing technical industry. So I invite you to join me in this career field. Check out our Security Plus course, read the testimonials, and join this wonderful career field. Thanks again. Hope you have a great day.